Emilia Siafa from West Africa, Liberia. I work for a women's rights non-governmental organization. It's called Sister Aid Liberia, where I serve as the program director on women's political participation and leadership. The last 5 days of the training has been very insightful. I have been able to learn not just from the presentation, but I've been able to gather the information from all the participants on their different experiences and expertise on how they have managed project directly and indirectly over the years. The information I've gathered from the training are very essential for me since I am directly managing project in my institution. I have been able to identify gaps here and there that I haven't really effectively been good at, or I didn't notice there were gaps, in fact, or they were important to managing the projects that I have managed. Moving forward, I have more information now. I have more ideas. I know new skills and techniques that I can incorporate as I go about managing projects, not just managing, but effectively managing projects for better results and impact. So far, so good. It was great. It was insightful and interesting, and I look forward to, being a participant of other future programs with this institution.
Hello, everyone. I believe you can all hear me. Please just say, raise your hand or just send a reaction if you can hear me. Walter, thank you so much for joining. We have Walter from Ethiopia. Thank you so much, everyone, for gracing this wonderful webinar on disaster risk management. Today, we will be mainly looking at the resilient horizons, where we try to explore the disaster risk reduction and the climate nexus confirmation. So it's quite a very intriguing topic where we will get to analyze and look at two different perspectives and how they influence each other in our environment. So thank you once again for joining this session. My name is Sheilah. I'm part of the academics team here at Humanitarian Global, and I will be the moderator for today. With that, basically, house rules, we'll be starting with introductions. We get to know who are the people behind making this webinar a success. And then I'll be doing a little shout out to people who have already joined the webinar, that you know and appreciate you for being able to join this session. And then after that, we will have a little talk from our team in regards to what Humanitarian Global has for us. Then from there, we'll get to the session for today. And then after that, we'll have a very good session on question and answer. So if you have any questions, if you have any comments, if you have any clarifications, do channel them to the Q&A section. And then we will be able to answer them once we end the presentation from our experts. So with that, I think I would want to invite my colleague Anthony to just introduce himself, and then he'll come later on with updates from Humanitarian. Welcome, Anthony.
Thank you so much, Sheilah. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to our participants based on where you might be connecting from. Thank you so much for joining our session today. Looking forward to having a fruitful one, and keep on engaging with us on the chat section, and also invite your colleagues, your friends to join the session. My name is Anthony, and looking forward to interacting more with you. Thank you so much, and back to you, Sheilah.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Anthony, for that invite as well. Let me also bring on board our expert to just say hi, and then she'll come later on to give us a little bit about herself, even as she does the presentation. But for now, let's just get to hear her voice, then we will proceed. Esther, please say hi. Okay. That I don't know if it's me, but Esther, that was very brief. Thank you so much for that. we'll have a chance where we'll bring Esther later on to be able to tell us a bit about herself, what she does, and also tell us what she has in store. So I want to say hi to, I've said hi to Walde from Ethiopia. Hi, Abdul. Welcome, Ilham. We have Abdul Rahim from Pakistan. You're very much welcome. And then we have Jeremiah from South Africa. You're very much welcome, as well as Faisal, Ismail, and everyone else. So with that, I think I will want to bring on board Anthony to give us any updates that we have from Humanitarian Global. Welcome, Anthony.
Thank you so much, Sheilah, once again, and thank you for the invite. So as we get started, I know maybe some of us, it's for the first time that you're joining our webinar sessions, and I would like to take this opportunity to welcome you and maybe briefly for you to understand more about who we are, what we do. Humanitarian Global, we are a training organization, and our main focus has been to offer you with a chance to upskill and build your capacity. So what I would like to share with you today, as we look into this thematic field of disaster risk reduction and management, I'm so happy to share with you resources, courses that you can be able to undertake at our institution. And that's what I would like to share with you in a few. So I'm trying to share my screen just now. And maybe Sheilah, you can confirm whether you can see my screen, just to make sure that I'm sharing the right one.
Yes, we can see your screen.
Okay, good. Yeah, so this is our website, and I know maybe most of us, you've been able to interact with it. So just a quick guide on how you can navigate through and locate these courses that you might want to further your skills, further your knowledge, advance your career within the field of disaster risk reduction and management. First of all, I would like to say that we do have self-paced courses, and this is where we have a certificate level course in DRRM and also a diploma level course. So for you to access these courses, you can go to train and learn with us, and you're going to see there is an option here for online courses. And for the online courses, you'd see different disciplines that we do cover. So apart from the DRRM, we do have monitoring, evaluation, accountability, and learning. And you can be able to click and see through the different levels of this course that we do offer. We have water sanitation as well. We have human nutrition and dietetics. We have procurement and supply chain management. We have now the disaster risk reduction and management. We do also have food security and nutrition in emergencies. We have maternal, infant, and young child nutrition. And maybe now just looking at the DRRM, once you click on that link, it's going to open and lead you to a page where you can see the individual courses that I was talking about. So for these DRRM course, we do cover it in two levels. So we have a certificate level in disaster risk reduction and management. This is a 3-month course. And once you open there, you'd be able to see, sorry, that is the diploma level course. So this is a 6 months course period, 6 months period course. And for this one, we do have 4 areas, 4 modules that we do cover. Quickly, if I can run you through, we talk about the gender-based DRRM, and this is where we look into the issues to do with gender when it comes to disaster risk reduction and management. We talk about gender analysis, we talk about gender issues and gender equality. We also take you through on how to implement a gender-responsive approach as you do your projects. So the second module, we look into the various disaster risk and reduction management frameworks. And among these frameworks, we start by trying to help you understand what are these frameworks. And we look into the different ones and the most commonly used frameworks, where we look into the Yokohama strategy. We talk about the Hugo framework for action, and also one of the most popular one, which I know you might have interacted with, that is the Sendai framework. Looking at the third module, we try to look into the issues of displacement, especially when at the onset of any disaster, we're going to be talking about displacement of people. So this is a very good module that is going to cover different aspects which are very key when it comes to response. So we talk about the concept of displacement, where we look into internally displaced persons, IDPs. We also look into refugees. We talk about the humanitarianism and WASH aspect, which is very critical. We look into the field of food in emergencies, and also look into health in emergencies. So that is our third module. And then finally, we look into practically now, how can you set up a response? So we talk about the concept of disaster management. We look into the different, the entire cycle of the disaster management cycle. We talk about the core humanitarian standards and also the response process. So you can see with this course, it's a course that is going to equip you with skills. And the good thing is that we take a practical approach when it comes to delivering this course to you, so that at the end of the course, you can be competent, you can be able to have acquired the required skill set for you as you try to amplify your impact when it comes to response to emergencies. So this is a course that is going to be taking a period of 6 months, and it's offered fully on a self-paced mode of planning, where it means that you can study at your own pace, and that is through our e-learning platform. So to apply quickly, you can just click on that button, and then it's going to lead you to a form. It's very easy. We have made it easy for you to register for this course, and then you can fill your details. And then once you've done so, our team is going to reach out to you. So quickly, allow me to just mention about the other level, the first one, which was supposed to be the certificate level course. And this is a 3 months level, 3 months period course, where you're going to learn more about introductory concepts when it comes to DRRM. And here we look into the introduction to disaster risk reduction and management discipline. We talk about what is DRRM. We look into the history of the DRRM. We also talk about significance of disaster risk reduction and management. Why do we study this area? How is it significant when it comes to humanitarian response? We also look into the emerging trends when it comes to disaster risk reduction and management. And the second module, it's all about trying to make sure that you can understand the various terms and terminologies and concepts when it comes to disaster risk reduction and management. The third module, we look into disasters and risk assessment. So we talk about the different types of disasters. We look into the concept of disaster management. We look into risk assessment. And then we also take you through the stepwise procedure on how to do risk assessment. So that is what you anticipate to be covered in this course. Again, this is going to take a period of 3 months, purely self-paced. As much as you might be a very busy professional, you can be able to undertake this course and study at your own pace with the support of our team and also our trainers and consultants here. So with that said, another area just quickly where you can also get more training when it comes to this field, I would like just to refer you to the organizational solutions. So this is where we talk about the training workshop, where you can do like a 1-week training on these fields. And maybe just to quickly mention, if you come to the disaster risk reduction and management, so this is the mother category, and then under that umbrella, you'd be able to find that we have so many training workshops that I'm not going to take you through the training outlines, but I would like to refer you to visit that link, and then you can see. Maybe just to mention, we even start by looking at some of the contemporary training or maybe concepts in the market, and this is where we look into mastering carbon marketing for sustainable future. This is one of our newest training when it comes to carbon markets. We look into the comprehensive disaster management, that is a CDM for media practitioners. So this is a very important course for you that you can be able to have a look at. So once you click on it, you're going to see the full course outline there, and then there's going to be a link for you to register. We also have another training on comprehensive emergency management for humanitarian and development practitioners. We have disaster communication and early warning systems. I know these are concepts that we are quite familiar with if this is our field. We talk about disaster preparedness and response planning. We also have a training on Emergency Operation Center, that is the EOC. We have the ICS, that is the Incident Command System. And also another exciting training that I would want you to check out, that is Shielding Societies, where we look into the social inclusion, protection, and then climate adaptation and flourishing livelihood. So that is also a training workshop that we have there. And then we do also have a training workshop on resilient horizons. And this is where we look at mastering the concept of disaster risk reduction and management, and also the aspects of climate resilience. So maybe just quickly, if I try to take one, for example, so that you can know how to register or make an inquiry. You might be here, you want your team to undertake this kind of a training. So just click on it, and then you're going to see we have two options here. So you can register as an individual. So you'd want to do this course individually. You can be able to register, fill the details. So it's going to open a form, and then you can fill your details there. And then we're going to reach out to you. Again, if you want to register for your team, just click on that link, and then you're going to have a form there, fill it, and then our team is going to be there to respond to you. So we are eagerly waiting for you to make applications. And I know Esther, she has so much to share with us. So today might not be able to cover like totally everything, but it's going to be a snippet of what you expect when you join our training workshops and also our courses. And with that said, on the chat section, chat with me, chat with my colleagues there. I'm going to be happy to assist you to join us for these courses. So with that said, thank you so much, Sheilah, for the opportunity, and back to you.
Great. Thank you so much, Anthony, for that brief description of what you have in store for you under disaster management. So please make a point to register and get to learn more about what really happens in that field. Let's say hi to Abdikadir from Kenya, and as well as who else have I not said hi to? Yes, good. So thank you so much for that. I think I want to bring on board Esther to proceed to give us what she has in store. I'm sure she'll tell us a bit about herself and just get to know what she has prepared for us. So Esther, please, you can proceed.
Hi, everyone. My name is Esther Wakio, and I'm going to be the key speaker of today. Under Humanitarian Global, I am part of the disaster risk reduction expert team, and I'm sure I've been able to interact with one or two of you through the course, marking your work, sometimes maybe the webinars that you've been able to attend before. So yeah, I'm looking forward to today's session. I'm sure we're going to have a very good one. It's quite extensive. I'll try to really break it down so that we are all moving along together. But otherwise, I'm just really excited to be here and to have a fruitful conversation with us all. Thanks.
Good. Thank you so much, Esther, for that. I believe now we understand and know who Esther is, who I would want her to now be able to share her screen so that now she can be able to proceed to give us what she has in store. Please, just as a reminder, as Esther shares her screen, as a reminder, we will be sharing the resources that we have used today, plus the recording after by close of business tomorrow. So keep in touch and ensure that you have your contact details with us so that now we'll be able to share the details with you as well. Thank you very much.
Okay, I believe we can all see my screen. So today we are going to talk about resilient horizons. Thank you. So the title of my presentation is Resilient Horizons, mainly just to explore how disaster risk reduction interacts with climate change. So a preemptive title to that would be Understanding the Intersection of Climate Change and Disaster Risk Management. What we are trying to explore today is to see how disaster and climate meet and how they interact with each other, and how we are able to borrow strategies from both to kind of mitigate each other. So we are going to first start with now an introduction of our overview of today is going to be understanding the disaster risk reduction and climate nexus, as I have highlighted. And now the key challenges and opportunities that arise from that situation, case studies of where we have been able to apply climate and disaster risk reduction strategies together to help our community to be resilient. And now finally, that will highlight strategies for building resilience. So our main objective is to explore the linkages between climate change and disaster risk, as well as to identify the actionable strategies for enhancing resilience in our communities. So the first step is to first understand what climate is. We cannot talk about climate without talking about weather. I believe in our various places where we are listening this from, we are either under a sunny environment or a very cold environment. So that basically defines our weather. And the weather is the day-to-day or season-to-season changes in the atmosphere of a particular place and time, where we look at the variables such as rainfall, temperature, cloudiness, moisture, wind speed to tell the weather of a place. Now, when these conditions have been recorded over a long period of time, say, for example, a decade or 30 years, now we are talking about climate. When the patterns of weather that have been recorded over a period of time, going towards a decade, are highlighting a continual significant change that has now led to new conditions in that area. Now we are talking about climate change. But in a situation where these weather conditions tend to vary, now we are talking about climate variability. In most places right now in Africa, we are experiencing climate variability. This means there is an introduction of a new set of conditions that are not yet permanent because they have not been present as a new state of climate of the place for over 30 years. It has to exceed 30 years for it to be classified as climate change. I hope we are together. Okay, so we'll just continue on. In case you have questions, I'll take them on at the very end of the presentation. So with that, I think I have begun to explain what climate change is. Climate change can be caused by two things. It can either be natural, where the variability of climate of an area has been experienced for a long time and it has just occurred naturally through solar radiation. Then therefore now we expect the place to just naturally have a desert that has come from the new conditions that have been experienced in the area without really human intervention. But now where the place is experiencing a new climate because of the activities that the human beings in that area have introduced in their environment, then therefore we are experiencing a human-induced climate change. The main proponent of human-induced climate change is the release of greenhouse gases, mainly carbon dioxide, methane, nitrogen oxide, which basically are the gases that deplete our ozone layer and leading to more sun rays coming into our Earth's surface and not being released. Therefore, it leads to a gradual scenario where the temperature is increasing and generally a condition called global warming. So global warming is the slow increase in the average temperature of the Earth's atmosphere because an increased amount of energy, basically heat in this situation, striking the Earth from the sun is being trapped in the atmosphere and not radiated out into space. Here we have a pictorial example of what I'm talking about. So at the very far left is the sun. The rays from the sun, when they are coming from the sun to the earth, are called short rays. They are meant to come and warm the atmosphere, and once they hit the earth's surface, they are supposed to be reflected back to the atmosphere to allow for cooling. But now because of the gases that have been released into the air, known as greenhouse gases, they go and deplete the ozone layer. You can see there's an area labeled ozone layer. When that layer is damaged, it causes sort of, the greenhouse gases cause some sort of a blanket situation around the troposphere, which now leads to a situation where once the rays from the sun have hit the earth, when they're being reflected back, they're absorbed by the blanket of gases known as greenhouse gases, therefore trapping them in our atmosphere and causing the continual state of warming. Now, the consequence of this is a situation where, sorry, before I go to the next slide, the outcome of this is a situation where we have been experiencing a gradual increase of temperature from as back as the 1880s, which is basically when we started our industrial revolution. So from 1880 until now, we are in 2024, you can imagine the Earth has been continually experiencing an increase of temperature. And to make it worse, in the last of the past 3 decades, the temperature hike has been higher than it has been ever recorded since earlier on, as back as 1850, as I have quoted. So what this results into is that we are seeing a lot of changes in our ecosystem, where now we are having melting of ice glaciers. There's change in biodiversity. We are experiencing a lot of biodiversity that was probably in some areas that are being depleted as these crops or these organisms are being seen in other areas. There's also the ice sheet melting, where, like for example, in places such as Greenland, they are experiencing a lot of ice sheet melting, considering Greenland holds like 8% of our Earth's water. When this ice melts, it melts into our seas, which means we are losing more and more water that is actually used for our own sustenance. There's also declining snow cover in the northern hemisphere. There's the rise of sea level, which is now experienced in our countries as increased floods, increased warnings about cyclones, increased downpour, among other results of indications of climate change. So why is climate change important in disaster risk reduction? When climate change occurs, it affects our environment, it affects our ecosystems, it affects our water resources, our food systems. Human beings are forced to migrate, among other major compounded issues that come from this. Now those issues are now what come to disaster as vulnerabilities in our communities. And we all know very well that a disaster occurs when a hazardous situation interacts with a vulnerable community exceeding their coping capacity. Climate change directly affects and causes vulnerabilities to increase as well as risks, because it can present itself as a hazard or interact with a community causing a vulnerability. We go on. So the next thing we are going to look at is climate disaster risk nexus. And basically this is how we're going to look at climate related hazards and vulnerabilities. On the slide, we can see 3 images. On the first one, we can see a situation where there's a lot of areas that have been flooded. The second one is kind of, it is a thermometer, so it's pointing towards temperature increase. And the third one, we are seeing a very, very heavy snowfall, which also looks like an avalanche. So basically, all these are situations where climate variability has led to a situation where homes are mushroomed in water. We are seeing water resources here are definitely interfered with. We are seeing a disaster that has come about based on a climatic condition. So more specifically, we're going to look at the various elements that are being affected by climate that lead to disaster risks. When we look at ecosystems, the risks that come about are from local, regional, and global extinction of biodiversity, as well as animals. And also you can argue that climate change, let's say in a flood situation, death can result from floods. Reduced ecosystem goods and services. There are some crops that were easy to grow before, but now they're being affected. When a place is flooded, it means if there was vegetation in that area, no one is expecting to have any harvest. Therefore, it has reduced ecosystem goods and services, as well as altered ecosystem structure and declining ecosystem functioning, nature-based tourism, and biodiversity loss. A much good example of this point is how most of our pastoralist communities in our host countries are having to migrate for longer seasons because most of the grass belts have been affected by floods, either by, for one, being cut out. By now, those areas now being flooded, it has caused those areas being inaccessible. We can look at the grass belt from Kenya towards Uganda. There was a time we had a lot of conflict in that area because now once the floods affected our country, most of our pastoralists were forced to move. And now because the flood situation is in most countries, it kind of brought a sort of hostile situation between our pastoralists in Kenya and the ones in Uganda. And considering we have a lot of pastoralist communities, even in Nigeria, all along African countries, we have many of our populations having to move because of one way or another, their ecosystem has been interfered with by floods or drought. Secondly, we can also look at water resources. Climate change has led to reduced hydroelectricity and irrigation in areas where water, initially, when there was drought in most of our countries, it led to a lot of hydroelectric issues, as well as having agriculture as a main source of food system. It got really affected by irrigation. Also, we have reduced groundwater recharge and salinization. We also have drought, floods, and heat waves as an outcome of climate change. On food systems, I had already highlighted reduced crop productivity and revenues. You will notice some conditions are brought about by climate change. For example, because of thinning grass belts, locust migrations is very common, either in increase or decrease of rainfall, which directly affects our food systems when these pests and diseases become more prevalent once their food systems have been affected. Increased livestock mortality and price shocks. Longer periods of drought lead to higher losses in our livestock fields in terms of death of livestock. And as well as price shocks of the markets because of the invariability. I was listening to a documentary before this about Bangladesh, and they were saying initially they used to experience 6 seasons of rain. Now they are experiencing 12 seasons of rain. I can only imagine the implication of that even in our own host countries, where now we are experiencing more climate variability conditions. Therefore, increased vulnerability and increased threats of hazards. Lastly, we also look at human settlements and infrastructure as an area affected by climate change. Here, leading to loss or damage to formal and informal dwellings. Many houses were destroyed by floods in our countries. There's also damage to transport systems, damage to energy systems, damage to water supply, sanitation, education, and health infrastructure, as well as migration and displacements. When you look at the effects of the climate variable conditions that were brought, these are now the risks and the vulnerable conditions that are now coming about from the climate and disaster risk nexus. Now, to really put it into perspective, we have to define what disaster risk reduction is. Disaster risk is the chance of likelihood of suffering harm and loss as a result of a hazardous event. It closely depends on the exposure of something to a hazard. This can be expressed as disaster risk being the outcome of a hazard interacting with a vulnerability at the expense of the coping capacity of the community. Now, to put it into perspective, the hazard here will be, let's say, flood. Floods interacting with the vulnerability here being poor living conditions. The outcome of it will be, or rather, let me now put it more clearly. For example, now we have the flood as the hazard. The vulnerability would be a community living in a flood-prone area, for example, marginalized regions. The coping capacity has to be absent in the sense that maybe they do not have, the buildings are not well built, or rather the community is overcrowded over a particular resource, let's say water. It will lead to a disaster risk, being death or whatever outcome depending on the severity of the hazard and the vulnerability. The output of risk analysis is usually an estimation of risk scenarios. This is a formula that reflects the three variables of disaster risk. It treats capacity as independent variable in disaster risk. So basically what we are preempting is the extent of how much a community is at risk is defined as its exposure to that risk. A societal element is said to be at risk when it is exposed to hazards and is likely to be adversely affected by the impact of those hazards when they occur. So in conclusion, disaster risk reduction is a systematic approach to identifying, assessing, and reducing the risks of a disaster. So when we are looking at introducing disaster risk reduction to climate change as a strategy, we are talking about introducing a systematic approach of identifying, one, assessing, and then therefore reducing the risks of disaster. How can we do this? For one, we have frameworks that cut across both climate change and disaster risk management. Key examples would be the Paris Agreement of 2015, which limits global warming. It talks about reducing carbon emissions. We have seen one of the courses that are going to be offered under disaster risk reduction will be carbon marketing. So here we are basically going to look at the strategies that have come about from Paris Agreement as strategies to encourage companies to reduce their emission of carbon. We have carbon credits, we have voluntary and involuntary carbon credits, where now companies can come in and say, because then they emit a particular percentage of carbon, they are required to equally invest in a carbon sequestrating strategy into the atmosphere that will cater for that carbon that they have emitted. Examples of that would be the Green Belt movement that we are experiencing so much in Africa, where now most countries in abroad, because of the big industrialization companies that they are having in their countries, they would come in our African countries and basically foster green belt movements where they encourage climate change initiatives by donating money to compensate for the emission of carbon as a way of them now cleaning the atmosphere. And then we also have UN Sustainable Development Goals, which are the Sustainable Development Goals of 2015 to 2030. The main one in this case being Goal 13 on climate action that promotes sustainability and climate resilience. It directly impacts Africa, where now they are looking at how much we've been able to implement the Sustainable Development Goals in our own host countries. And then we have national adaptation plans, we have climate action plan, and global framework for climate services, which all are now enhancing climate information delivery to support decision making. When you investigate the particulars of these strategies in their application, they have risk reduction strategies because the climate change, the hazard being talked about is the one that the same hazard that leads to disaster risk. So as I have mentioned, you will find some of them are in both. For example, the SDG framework, because they are both addressing the same hazards. Integrating risk management, ecosystem-based adaptation. The Hyogo framework is the one that preceded the Sendai framework. So the Sendai framework was basically built as an improvement of the Hyogo framework, where Hyogo was simply looking to reduce, where Hyogo was simply looking to build resilience on the bigger sense of the word without really defining the specifics. Sendai breaks it down. Now talking about a 15-year plan where now we have actual actionable steps. Challenges to the DRRM and climate nexus. For one, we have inadequate data and risk assessments. We are yet still so far from having correct tools for data collection, especially in our countries in Africa, and even generally as in the globe. We are yet to improve. And the effect of this is reliable data is crucial for understanding the severity and the frequency of hazards, as well as for planning effective mitigation and adaptation strategies. You cannot plan when you are not sure about your data. So risk assessments may lack detail or specificity, leading to gaps in identifying vulnerable areas and populations. I'll again reiterate in the examples that we have recently been experiencing in our countries, which is the threats of floods and drought and cyclones. One common thing that we are yet to really overcome is the effects of inadequate data, because most of our host countries had to really react after the disasters have already started to occur in the host countries. So you'd imagine how much we'd be able to recover or even be safe from if we had the proper early warning systems set up. And also the collection of data would have been accurate to enable disaster preparedness planning to help our countries to survive better. We also have limited financial resources, as we are yet to really embrace disaster risk reduction as a main concern in our countries. There's also institutional and governance gaps, where most of the structure that should go towards having a proper disaster risk reduction organization in our countries is still lacking in terms of skill, in terms of training, in terms of the know-how, and also partnership. There's also another key challenge as coordination among stakeholders. You'd find, because now we're talking about a DRRM and climate nexus, most of the most spaces are yet to allow these two areas to work together. So the effect of this is doubling and gapping, doubling of effort, and now leads to gaps in how management is being handled. Yeah, and yet you'd find some of the data that disaster risk managers would need is actually with the climate group. If these two groups would actually have spaces or policies that force them to work together, it would lead to better recovery and resilience in our host countries. So, resilience. For us to talk about resilience, we have to look at the opportunities for synergy that is being presented by both climate and disaster risk reduction. For one, we have integrated approaches where now we can combine disaster risk reduction and climate adaptation strategies. Here, what am I talking about? I'm talking about accelerated investment on climate change mitigation and adaptation. Combining DRR and climate adaptation strategies, we have like carbon sequestration. Carbon sequestration refers to removal of carbon in the atmosphere through trees, because now they'll be able to now be processed better by the soil. That also caters for flooding. If you look at it in terms of now the ground won't be bare. And that therefore is combining a DRR strategy, planting trees to prevent flooding, and a climate adaptation strategy where now the trees are being planted are trees that really enhance carbon sequestration. We also have enhancing multi-hazard early warning systems. Climate departments have a host of meteorological tools. If these tools can be integrated with our tool for disaster management called the GIS, it will lead to more accuracy in prediction of floods, in prediction of cyclones, in the collection of data on these climate variable conditions, so as to really encourage the groups that are supposed to act to start on preparedness activities in good time. And the beauty of the meteorological department and the tools that it has, most of these elements that are being recorded can be used to predict over more than one disaster. For example, the elements that are going to be recorded to predict floods can also be used to record reduced rainfall, therefore can be used to kind of act as our early warning system of droughts. There's also cross-sectional collaboration, which is basically having a kind of a nexus of skills also, where disaster risk reduction experts can train with climate experts and vice versa, so as skills are being improved as a whole. There's also the point of innovative solutions, which is now the use of technology. What I was talking about when I was saying about GIS, community-based adaptation and resilience building. On community-based adaptation, most of this information is already present in the community. Community know sources of water that can be dependent on longer periods because they do not dry up. Springs that tend to be clean and can be used to be relied upon as sources of water as we rehabilitate the ones that have been affected by disaster. Knowledge on drought-resistant crops that can be planted prior drought situations, so as to be present to sustain the community during long periods of drought. It is a time where we have to embrace all these sources of information to really come up with a strong. When we talk about resilience, when you're talking about cross-sectional collaboration, it's not just the expert, it's also the community, where now imagine a situation where the meteorological department has issued a warning. The disaster risk reduction group takes the warning as an opportunity to create awareness to the community, and the community now together, they are able to sensitize prior in good time to start planting drought-resistant crops, or to start vacating, or to retrofit, to do flood proofing for their homes, so as to survive the impending loom of a flood or a drought. With that, I think now we can look at case studies to now really put it into perspective on how integrated DRRM strategies can be used in managing climatic disasters. I have 3 key examples. The first one is cyclone in Bangladesh. Now, Bangladesh, away from now what is happening to them right now politically, they are really, really prone to cyclones because of where they are based. On the map, it places them as a high vulnerable area to cyclones because it is low-lying. So tides tend to be really, really high most of the time during their year. As a consequence, now because of the climate change, they are experiencing more and more seasons of high rainfall. Aside of that is that now they have a lot of cyclones in the area. The approach that the community has taken up to help them manage this disaster is implementing community-based early warning systems, cyclone shelters, and evacuation plans. Basically, they have zoned the community and looked at areas where, okay, these ones are too close to the tides, they have to move. This place, maybe we can introduce sort of a flood proofing situation where it is now known as living with water. It's a local term, living with water, where now they are taught ways of how to flood proof, mainly raise their houses to a particular level that has already been established as the level where the water gets to. So the houses are raised as a flood proofing technique, or they are encouraged to build their houses with water impermeable material. Yeah. Just as a way to implement community-based early warning systems, as well as to also train them to be aware and to be sensitive of how to locally monitor and to know when they need to move, when to cause an alarm in terms of cyclones. There's also now the strategies that they are using, the structural ones for DRRM, is early warning systems, improved accuracy and communication of cyclone warnings through, like, now the meteorological department having most of their communities connected to the main communication centers so that they're able to get this information in good time. And also cyclone shelters, community training, basically having a disaster-aware, disaster-safe culture by training the community and giving them the skills they need to keep themselves disaster safe. The impact is significant reduction of cyclone-related fatalities and property damage, as well as community resilience. The lesson learned here is the importance of integrating local knowledge with technical solutions and engaging communities in preparedness efforts. The second one, we have urban resilience in Manila, which was basically introduced to address flood risk through integrated planning. I do believe this is something that will really benefit most of our African countries, because when you look at the global risk market, global risk carpet or map that was released after research by the UN currently, it indicates the highest risk as climate change from the period of 2020 to 2024, to 2026 actually, sorry. And thereby from there we'll have now the impact on the environment and how it will cascade to social polarity. So basically what I'm highlighting is this is something that we'll really need to invest in our host countries if we are planning to be disaster managers with impact in our countries. So as I was saying, the second example is urban resilience in Manila, addressing flood risks through integrated planning. So Manila has been experiencing a lot of flood issues due to heavy rains and inadequate drainage. Inadequate drainage because of unplanned development, where now urban population occurred without zoning of lands. So you find some places where development should not have occurred. They are putting main infrastructures like hospitals, which end up being marooned by water in the event floods occur. So in this case, they sat down and they decided urban planners will have to work together with disaster managers. The approach was adopted an integrated urban planning approach to manage flood risks. Because already they had this problem present in their community, they could only map as is and decide areas where the people will be encouraged to move and areas where the people will just be encouraged to improve their infrastructure. So the strategies used here was flood risk mapping. Flood risk mapping is identify high-risk areas and vulnerabilities. Here, they use the nexus of tools from climate, the meteorological department, and they combine them with now the GIS tools, the ones for remote sensing, to kind of get an overview of the area and identify areas high risk with flooding, together with the help of the community, because the community also knows how high water level gets over the period of years that they have been settled there. And this data is very important when you are doing flood risk mapping. And then they also did infrastructure improvement, where upgraded drainage systems and built flood defenses, kind of unclogging of their drainage systems and encouraging development away from their main rivers. There was also land use planning, implementing zoning regulations to prevent construction in flood-prone areas, which I have explained. The impact was reduced flood frequency and severity, because now most of the people were away from the flood-prone areas, and as a consequence, improved urban infrastructure and resilience, putting up stronger structures that are flood-proof and they are fitted so as to avoid mushrooming of water every time there's heavy rains or heavy downpour. Effective flood management requires a holistic approach combining infrastructure, planning, and community engagement. Thirdly, we have drought management in the Horn of Africa. For this one, we are looking at combining climate data with local knowledge. For context, most of the African countries, especially in the Horn of Africa, experience severe droughts affecting agriculture and water supply. So an integrated climate with traditional local knowledge to improve management is paramount. An example of climate data integration is where meteorological data is used to forecast drought conditions. So here I was giving you an example where the meteorological data records that you are going to experience a season of reduced rainfall for a particular season. For example, let's say from the period of August to September. This information will be therefore communicated to the community so that they start to, they focus their planning, their next planting season with mainly drought-resistant crops, so that during the floods, during the drought season, they have food. They were already aware, they were already sensitized. Another example would be flood warning. Communities sometimes, because of staying in an area for a very long time, they can sometimes be able to predict a flood situation based on how they have been monitoring the rain pattern for a particular period, vis-a-vis how it used to be, looking at how their animals are behaving there. Sometimes can be used as an indication of strong wind, and therefore can be used to create a warning for cyclones. There's also the use of local knowledge, where now we incorporate indigenous knowledge and practice for water conservation and crop management, creation of water pans that will be present during the long periods of drought. Encouraging communities to have grass belts, to preserve their grass belts and intentionally plant them, to be present during the seasons where rain will not be as frequent as it has been, as a survival measure. There is also community involvement, where engaged local communities in decision making and adaptation strategies. This will enable the communities to feel more part of the planning process, and therefore willing to participate in drought preparedness response, which will enhance food and water security. So the lessons here we learn are combining scientific data with local expertise can enhance effectiveness of drought management strategies. As we close, our closing thoughts here can be fathomed as: resilience is a shared responsibility. Let's work together to safeguard our communities. So with that, I think I have come to the end of my presentation. I'll be taking up any questions.
Great. Thank you so much, Esther, for that interesting conversation we've had around disaster management and climate change. I appreciate that we are all listening, and there are so many comments that are coming up. Thank you very much. So we want to ask the questions. I would request that anyone who has a question to please raise up your hand. And then we will be able to give you a chance to be able to speak. But I'm happy that Abrao has also been able to give some different challenges that we can be able to face, like political influence, geopolitical influence. We look at lack of inclusive and participation, as the local people are usually not involved in these discussions. So thank you everyone for that. So I would want to invite Job to be able to give us ask his question. Job, are you able to unmute and say something? Unmute and please ask your question. Hello, Job. You can unmute and ask your question. And as he prepares, maybe Esther, you can help me answer. Coco is asking, you have mentioned a lot of DRRM frameworks. So can you give us maybe a bit more explanation about it, and maybe just pinpoint a difference from them? Esther?
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I have seen the question. Can you give me more explanation? Okay, the Coco wants more explanation about disaster risk management frameworks. So disaster risk management frameworks are frameworks that have basically been structured around reducing the impact of disasters by managing risk. Let me give an example. The Sendai framework for disaster risk reduction has a 15-year plan to reduce disaster risk by enhancing resilience through risk management. The integration between these two is that where climate change is talking about floods, is talking about drought. Disaster risk is talking about, disaster risk is now talking about loss of lives, is talking about loss of biodiversity. You would say the effects, the effects of climate change are disaster risks. Therefore, climate change would be now the bigger word, alafu, and then now the subsect of it would be the risks that come out of climate change. The fact that now it is leading to food insecurity. So now the disaster risk management frameworks will encompass all that, will encompass climate change, because it is looking at it as a hazard, as a source of hazard. It will talk about water management, because it is looking at vulnerability. Because as we had looked at the definition of disaster risk, it is when a hazard and a vulnerable condition interact in the absence of a good coping capacity. I don't know if I have answered. Sheilah?
Okay. Yes. I believe you have been able to answer, but then I will also recommend to go to attend one of our classes so that now he can learn the different DRRM frameworks that are available. Thank you for that, Esther. Job, are you able to speak now?
Yes. Good morning from South Sudan. I believe you are hearing me.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, very good. I'm very thankful and appreciative to Sister Esther for the elaborate and course. And just I was very much interested in the case study, and I would love if she can scroll to the case study of Manila, where I just have clarity, not just a question, in fact, but just more shedding of light on the case study of Manila. Just as you scroll, if possible, or if not, and then I'm looking at what. Yes, exactly. Just scroll to the second case study. Yes, I'm trying to inquire what could be the objective and maybe the purpose. Like if you look at the objective, this could be a short short term. However, purpose can be long term. Can you just maybe bullet point or just outline some of the objective of this case study? I'm really interested in this because this is what is happening in my area. We have flooding every time, everywhere, and how do we, move, population to an urban, resilient area than from where the flooding is happening. Yeah, thank you so much.
Great, thank you so much.
Okay, thank you so much. I've understood your question. Now, to look at it keenly, therefore,
any comment on that?
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay,
Yes,
so
I can hear you too.
that is a very good question. Basically here, the objective, when you're looking at the objective of what urban resilience in Manila was looking at, here now we are talking about disaster risk management cycle. Because now as a flood, now the flood being the risk in this situation, you have to manage it. It won't be, it's not like it's just a one-off thing. It will take time. It will, there's first the analysis of the area. You have to first understand the impact. You have to look at the resources you have. So basically here is what we now unpack in a class situation when we are learning about disaster management, the cycle of disaster, and now the disaster management strategies and how you apply them according to the phase you are in the disaster cycle.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
so maybe in this session, maybe what I will also assist with is sharing a document on now the World Bank document that they prepared when they were managing the flood risk in Manila to help shed more light. But what I will encourage you is to apply now to enroll in a class scenario to learn now the disaster management cycle and the activities that take place in the cycle, especially when managing floods. Because truly it can't be one word and it cannot be a one word answer. Yes.
Okay. Okay. Thank you so much for that job. We'll share these resources with you so that now you can be able to work on it and get to learn from it. Thank you so much, John. There's another question, Esther. Some countries don't have institutions that have the capacity to respond to disaster very quickly. Sorry about that. Despite that, how can we handle that? How can we handle the disaster if in countries where we don't have institutions that have the capacity to respond to disaster quickly?
Thank you so much for that question. So what we can do in the countries where we do not have institutions and therefore capacity, we really have to work on community awareness, really linking up with the community and taking these skills to them, orienting them on how to flood proof their houses, orienting them on how to safeguard their properties and how to be aware and follow on flood reports so that they can know in a situation where they are not able to really flood proof, maybe they can consider moving to settle with a family until when the conditions are good to now go back, how they can, what kind of conditions they can be anticipating during long periods of no rain so that they can be able to prior now start planting start reworking their planting seasons according to the new conditions that have been brought about by climate change, having this information public to them. Something that most of our countries are not aware of is that most of the tools that are required to help with data collection are actually free. When you look at the UN repository, it has access to many tools that have already, not only just the GIS tool that helps with mapping, it also, there are a lot of tools that the UN has been able to come up with over time that is within their repository that helps with data collection, that most of them are actually free. It's just that we are not aware that these tools exist that can help to collect data that will help us really draw better evacuation maps, better, and then now training the community on how to respond to disasters, how to do search and rescue, how to do evacuation, how to do first aid. These are skills that basically looking at the definition of disaster risk and removing the elements that are there based on the capacity we have. Can we handle the hazard? If not, can we at least reduce the vulnerability? If not, how can we help improve the capacity? Yes.
Okay. Okay. Thank you so much for that. And I'm seeing there's so many questions and our time is far much gone. Allow me to give a chance to Mohammed to ask his question. Mohammed, and as he prepares, there's a question: how far are we on archiving the Sendai framework 15-year plan on reducing the global temperature, given that we are only left with 6 years?
Okay, on how far we are on archiving, basically now you'd see with the Sendai framework is being applied in Nexus with the Paris, with the one I had quoted earlier on. Let me just go back to it. Just a minute. Let me just go back to that slide. Here, we have the Paris Agreement. From the Paris Agreement, where we are supposed to reduce to up to 1.5 degrees Celsius, I don't think we are there yet. I actually think we are about 2 point something. I'll have to confirm after this webinar. So, but basically what is being done is now most of the European countries are really pushing climate change initiatives and carbon credit debates in a way of really reducing and capping the 1.5 towards the 1.5. You can even see that's why they have even not only initially the cap on emission of carbon was mainly placed on countries that are emitting the carbon, the countries that have this industrial the organizations that are responsible of releasing this carbon. But something that is coming up as new is the introduction of involuntary carbon credits, which allows for organizations even in tech to participate. Even though they are not emitting carbon, they are able to buy carbon credits. So yeah, which is also another way of really reducing the towards our road towards the 1.5 degrees Celsius. It's through these other frameworks, basically, yeah.
Okay, thank you so much, Esther, for that. Our time is for Margaret. If Mohammed is still here with us to ask his question, Mohammed, you can unmute.
Okay, thank you, Sharia, and the College of Humanitarian Global. I believe I'm audible.
Yes, you are.
Okay, thank you. I'm so pleased to participate for this great position, and I have gained a lot of skills and knowledge for this session. Thank you, Global Humanitarian Global. So my question is, when it comes to climate change or disaster risk reduction, and is an early warning, early action system is a part of climate change or disaster risk management? Or what is the difference between early warning, early action system and disaster risk management? So when it comes like climate change in disaster risk management, when we want to reduce or to change the climate for vulnerability, we refer like a DRR committee or EWA committee. So what is the criteria needed to the DRR to be the management of the disaster risk reduction? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mohammed. Have you, Esther, have you been able to get the question?
Yes. I would say the criteria is to first understand what disaster management is, and therefore to prioritize once to disaster risk management is how we manage the impact of climate change. But also climate change can be managed independently through climate change, the frameworks that have been developed around climate change. It's like how, let me give you an example. In a situation where the issue is flooding, right? And now part of the solution is infrastructure. It means the disaster management team will have to work together with people of engineering. They will borrow the skills. They will borrow the skills from how they are able to know the correct building codes, how they are able to determine if a building is due collapse. And these skills are going to be important for the disaster manager. This is why we were talking about, when we were talking about challenges we face. Remember, this whole webinar is about disaster risk management. So the main conversation here is disaster risk management. And in disaster risk management, we were looking at how climate affects disaster risk management and how climate already has frameworks that are similar to disaster management frameworks that can be used to manage our current situation where most of the disasters we are managing are climate prone. I hope I'm clear there. So the main conversation is disaster risk management and how all these other variables come together to help develop a strong disaster risk management strategy. So the strategy here being disaster risk management will be looking at what is disasters, what is disaster management. So what Abdul would advise you to do is now look at strengthening your knowledge on disaster management. Because now therefore you'll be able to look at the strategies, and the strategies now to map the strategy. Once you have understood what disaster management is and the cycle in disaster management, you'll be able to now map an actual strategy based on what activities are occurring in what stage. Now you've understood the cycle and the different activities that are taking place in the different stages of the disaster. Yeah, that is the direction. Yeah, because now when you're talking about early warning, it is a tool. It is a tool that is used in disaster risk management. It is not the only tool. It is just a tool in preparedness. Yes, yeah.
Okay.
So
Thank you so much for that. I believe, Mohammed, I will still insist if you please get in touch with us and be able to learn more about what is happening. I think we have come to the end of the session, and I don't want to take so much of your time, given that you got in early and you knew the training, the session was ending at 12. So I have like few questions from Felicia, who's talking about how do we encourage women in ensuring resilience to climate change in the wash sector. Bruce is asking how can we integrate HDP in DRRM, and what are the reasons governments are not giving so much attention to DRRM from Waldy. And Charles is also inquiring, what do you mean by carbon credit? So I will allow you to just answer them directly because of time on chat. On the Q&A section, Esther, but now they leave having their questions answered. But with that, I believe and I know that we have come to the end of this session. Thank you very much for being attentive. Thank you very much for the participation. Thank you very much for the comments. We truly appreciate and look forward to implementing new ideas, new presentations, and trying to just build everything that is happening within the humanitarian space. So with that, allow me to end there. I wish you all the best. We will be sharing these resources on email, preferably tomorrow by close of business, so that now you have access to all that resources that we have. We'll try as much as we can to also include the different, we will be able to include the different, the different case studies that Esther has been able to highlight, so that you understand where we're coming from with that particular aspect. So with that, thank you very much. Have a wonderful day, evening, and in everything, let's always try and maintain and improve the humanitarian space. Thank you and goodbye.
Attention humanitarian and development professionals. Are you looking to take your career to the next level? Then you've come to the right place. Humanitarian Global offers self-paced online courses designed specifically for you. With our comprehensive curriculum, you'll build your capacity in the most critical areas of humanitarian and development work. Our course offerings include monitoring, evaluation, accountability and learning, water, sanitation and hygiene, disaster risk reduction and management, food security and nutrition in emergencies, procurement and supply chain management, human nutrition and dietetics, maternal, infant and young child nutrition. With Humanitarian Global, you'll have the opportunity to grow your skills and impact the lives of people in need. Visit our website to learn more about our courses and apply today.
Grace Walunya. I work in the role of a team assistant with an international development organization. This was my first foray into project management, and so the course has been very instrumental in giving me the fundamentals of project management and leadership. I'm at a point in my career where I'm thinking of transitioning into middle management, and so I needed the practicals and the fundamentals of leadership and project management. At this point also, I work with a lot of projects and programs, and so with my role as a team assistant, I need an understanding into the processes of project management to be able to assist me in executing my task as a team assistant with my department and my programs. And so this project has delivered that. It has been spot on, and I'm glad that I took the course. It has also given me the drive to proceed to the next level, as it has given me the beginnings, the level one, the fundamentals. And so at this point, what I'm looking at is to proceed to the next level and get a deeper understanding. And so I'm glad that I took the course. It has been helpful, it has been enriching, and I'm glad that I did.